Hey y'all, thanks for clicking on this episode. It means a lot. Judah is one of my personal friends, and so this episode was really fun to get to do because just two friends talking back and forth. Now, Judah, he's an amazing person. He really cares about you as a person, wants to see you grow. Very intelligent, very humble as well, very serving guy. And this interview is, you can tell that he is that way in this interview. There are lots of golden nuggets that we talk about. We talk about how homelessness is affecting the world and how people can take preventative measures to help combat homelessness. We also talk about well-being and how you can better improve and how to find meaning in today's society. There's a lot of good stuff in this interview. I hope you guys are just as excited as I am to show you guys this video. Without further ado, please welcome to the stage, Judah Gerards.
How did you get into working at the Portland Rescue Mission, and how did that come about?
Man, I mean, the answer is not really all that exciting, particularly. I'm kind of a baby through nepotism, where my uncle's the director. Going back for context, was working at FedEx after my freshman year of college during the summer, and ended up having a medical procedure that needed to be done. And FedEx was like, "Yeah, we'll accommodate you for this medical procedure, and make sure that you are able to, after you return, able to do work that fits within your restrictions, like your weight restrictions. You can only lift up to like 50 pounds after a surgery." And so I had the surgery, and I got back and walked into work into FedEx, and was like, "All right, I'm here. Tell me what to do." And they said, "Well, there's nothing for you to do." And I was pretty distraught by that, and felt betrayed because I was told one thing and ended up being another. And so I go home without a job, needing to find something that fit within my medical criteria. And got a text from my uncle saying, "Would you like to come to the Portland Rescue Mission? I can offer you a summer gig just for 2 months or so. Here's the pay, all that kind of stuff. You won't even need to do an interview." And I said, "Well, I'm unsure, because this is not necessarily my target demographic, and maybe there's some thoughts of fear going on in my head, what that might look like." And next thing you know, I'm getting a call from one of the hiring managers, and he's like, "Here's your pay. When can you start?" And I'm like, "Okay, no interview, no nothing. I'll might as well. Like, it's just for 2 months. Might as well get into it." And I started, and kind of did the work that I could in those 2 months. And as we're approaching on the about a week before my leave date, I get an email from my supervisor, who's not my uncle, who's the director, is my main supervisor, who's below him, saying, "Hey, we really like you, and we think that you do great work and have a work ethic that fits the culture of this ministry and of this organization. We'd love for you to stay long term, whatever that may look like for you." And after a lot of thought and discernment, I said to myself, "Okay, the pay's great, the benefits are great, the coworkers are great, the actual work itself is, it's like, do I want to do this long term?" But I decided to do it, and I've been doing it for upwards of 3 years now. Have progressed in my professional journey, have gained responsibilities that I did not have at the beginning of being hired, and that's kind of where we're at now in this moment. So, yeah.
Awesome. That is very crazy to me. That FedEx, they made you a false promise essentially, and they were just like, "Oh, no, you can't work here anymore." That is crazy to me, and that's amazing how like it's almost like the Portland Rescue Mission, like it was meant to be, because it just like
Kind of.
it just went. It was like presented to you. It was like the director and everything, and so like, I mean, what are the odds? Like.
It seems really out of the field, right? You know, it's for a top grossing company as FedEx is, you know, to lie to their employee and suddenly this magically out of nowhere, this new thing kind of came to place and came to fruition. Now, look at me now. Like I've been in there for 3 years, and it's been a journey, and you know, it definitely is. I would say it's kind of a coincidental, like divinely inspired, or however you would describe it in your worldview, but not something I would have expected, but something I needed in the moment. So
that's really interesting. I mean, like, just how that kind of like that divinely inspired bit of like how that actually happened.
Yeah.
My question then, since you didn't really go through like an interview process at all for like the job, if there was someone watching this, which probably will be someone watching this, that would be interested in doing the type of job that you do, how would they go about doing that process? And in tandem with that question, what does an everyday essentially task look like at the Portland Rescue Mission?
So you're asking, like, how would somebody succeed in an interview to get into Portland Rescue Mission inclusively, or like social services as a whole?
So yeah, essentially if they wanted to do what you were doing, and then as to follow up on that, to kind of explain more, what would it look like with the daily tasks that you have to do? So
yeah, a lot of the interviews are assess character, assess your relationship with the Lord, and assess your ability to be professionally competent. They're looking very exclusively for, they say, somebody who's hungry, humble, and smart, somebody who is able to serve with joy in their heart, being humble, joyful servants of the Lord, we call it. And so as long as you can kind of sell yourself as somebody who is obviously sell yourself in a realistic way, not put on this fake persona, but sell yourself as in like I can prove to you that I am a humble, joyful servant of the Lord, and at the same time very hungry to do this kind of work, and smart in how I approach it, right? Because you can be super hungry and you can be super humble, but are you going to go into this work and make really dumb decisions and kind of mess up the nature of how the organization works? And so I would say if you're going through an interview process, right, and this is just general, like interview period, whether it be for this specific organization or any other social service or any organization period, they're looking for these kind of qualities. And your job is to sell yourself, right? Your job is to say, this is who I am. This is how I fit with your qualities, and this is what I can aid to your organization. This is how I can fit and slide myself into the work that you guys do. And I believe in my heart of hearts that that's going to actually happen, right? You kind of do some little motivational interviewing with the hiring team and really convince them that you are the pick to do. You can't just walk into an interview and say, yeah, I believe I'm that. Yeah, I'm that. Yeah, I can help out. Yeah. Be confident and actually like make them feel some sort of emotion and affect to be convinced that you are the person, right? And then once that step kind of happens, and maybe say you do get the position, specifically with the Portland Rescue Mission, something you'd be doing I mean, there's many different facets of what the Portland Rescue Mission does. It is the largest homeless services organization in the city of Portland, Oregon. And so they have 4 main different sites, and it really depends like where you see yourself going. Something like my position, what I'd be doing is you'd be in the heart of downtown Portland. You'd be serving the people who need this service the most. You walk around the city and you see these people who are on the side of the streets, just kind of in crisis, asking for food, money, that kind of stuff, the cardboard signs. These are the type of people that we're seeking, and rather than kind of going out to them, we have a solid sedentary place that they can come to. Sorry, I need a cough. I'll edit this part out.
Doing great so far.
Mm-hmm. Rather than going out to kind of cater to where they are, we have that, and we're kind of growing that. The organization is starting that process and procedure, but we're very sedentary. Like we're here, and if you can find it in you to come here, then we can help you. And so it's being available consistently, and 24/7. That's like we're open all the time. We never close. We have night crew. We have all that kind of stuff. Just that aspect of being that hospitality natured building and staff is kind of what you're trying to foster in this work. And you can bring your own personal set of skills to this. When I was hired, I had a psychology background, and I brought my personal set of skills into. I was seeking out intentional one-on-one conversation, trying to get people and motivate them into recovery programs through the same organization, right? And so they're also part of being hungry is saying, here's what I have, here are my skills, my background. Can we talk about how to incorporate these into helping people get off the streets and kind of aiding in the homelessness crisis that is affecting Portland? So I would assume that would be a appropriate response to kind of what you're trying to inquire here.
Yes, indeed. And to summarize things that you said, the 3 key takeaways for an interview are to be humble, hungry, and smart.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are some important things to start even pursuing, as you mentioned, where it's like you can't just fake it, you have to live it. And then on top of that, you mentioned how you had previous psychology experience,
Mm-hmm.
and that helped you along the way. How so you're at George Fox University, you're a psychology major. So what are the key lessons or some principles that you have learned in your college education that have helped translate to working at the Portland Rescue Mission?
That's a great question. You're kind of working with a specific demographic of people who you need to have a catered approach to dealing with. I always say that if you're going to go into this line of work, you need to be consciously aware that behavior is not predictable. And you could, for example, you might go to a public library and somebody's sitting down and maybe their hair looks really nice. It looks well done, and you go up to them and you compliment them hey, I like your hair today. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. That makes me feel nice. Whereas if you're working with this demographic, you could do the same thing. You could be saying, oh, I like the way your hair looks. It looks very well done and very nice. And then they could get, mind your own business, right? Just leave me alone and kind of posture up. And you'd be confused because you're that's not the response that I expected from normal human connection and interaction. And so the where the psychology comes in is recognizing these triggers, and you kind of have to learn behaviorally, cognitively, developmentally why these people are responding in the ways they are, and then use that to cater towards how are you then going to assist them, right? And it might sound possibly manipulative maybe to say, but to recognize these triggers and intentionally kind of use them for good can be really beneficial to working with these type of people and getting them motivated. Because oftentimes one thing can go in one ear and out the other, right? And if you're gonna try to get a message or a point across to them, utilize them something that they're going to hear and that they're going to remember is very crucial. And oftentimes, as weird as it is to say, that might be something traumatic, something triggering, but utilizing that to your advantage for that sense of motivation. And you'll just learn that. I mean, when you study psychology, you'll learn about how to assess these triggers, how to be culturally competent, and how to kind of know how trauma affects an individual and how to see, these triggers that trauma can play on an individual and use those to benefit the person.
What are some common triggers working with the demographic of homelessness?
It's actually varies person to person. And so, in some instances, it can be mentioning the fact that they are an addict, saying and owning that fact, owning some sort of sense of accountability and independence with this is who I am, which is the core model of all AA meetings, all 12-step meetings is, I am an alcoholic. I am an opioid user. This is who I am, and it's part of my identity, and it's part of my recovery as well, because I'm going to flip my identity, flip the tables on its head and say, I am no longer an alcoholic, right? This can be a big trigger depending on their history and their past with addiction and with alcohol use. Sometimes it can be childhood trauma, lack of sufficient parenting, which is kind of like my specific niche in psychology is parenting, child development, that kind of stuff. So something I found beneficial is being like, so how was your home life? What was it like growing up? And those types of conversations can get really emotional, can induce some sense of remembrance of trauma, and it can be very triggering, and it could get some people angry. But I also find so much growth and repair amidst these conversations of, okay, well, how can we work around like rewriting the story, rewriting the narrative that you are not a worthless child. You are not just your parents' tool. You are an individual human being who's worthy and deserving of so much. How can we make this, that, and that key point your identity? And so it really depends on background. It depends on the individual and what they're coming with, the baggage that they're coming with. And once you initiate these intentional conversations, you can kind of nitpick. Oh, I sense that maybe addiction might be a big problem for you. Like, let's talk more about this. And it'll get them stimulated to have an engaging conversation. That's where you find the fruit of recovery. That's where you find the fruit of bringing them back into stable living and independent, healthy living.
So to summarize the things you said, there's a big center around addiction in terms of like homelessness, and how you it's unique person to person. You have to like tailor the conversations to them. I wonder, what is that like? Do the principles that you use working at the Portland Rescue Mission addiction work in terms of like working with addiction with these people also translate to other addictions that other people might have? Like, I'm just thinking of like pornography is a huge one. I know a lot of people that struggle with that.
Yeah.
So what?
Caffeine.
Yeah. Caffeine.
Nicotine, other stuff.
Yeah. And so what are some like ways that translates over to that, and just an overall like application of addiction?
you're kind of asking like how do we take these modalities and how universal are they, kind of like
Yes.
to all senses of addiction?
Yes. So what application and use do they have for addiction as a whole?
Yeah. So I mean, there are 12-step modalities with pretty much any addiction or a lot of traumas have them. I mean, there's like anonymous meetings for victims of abuse from a partner who had an addiction. There's nicotine anonymous, there's pornography anonymous, there's caffeine anonymous. I mean there's 12-step modality can be taken and used with any sense of addiction, with phone and screen time addiction. And the core basis of it is quite universal. It is the acceptance that you have to take accountability for your own actions. You're not gonna go into any recovering, or I should say recovered addict of anything, and none of them are gonna say, "Yay, society really just beat me down and that started my addiction, and then life started to kind of get good, and people in society treated me good, and maybe I got a nice job, and that was the reason I'm out of addiction." Like, no, nobody's going to say that, and if they do say that, there's a lot that they're hiding, which is the fact that it is an independent struggle, right? It is something that eventually at some point you're going to have to say, this is me, these are the decisions I'm starting to make. I can blame the world as much as I want to, right? And to some aspect, the world does have some sort of environmental stressors that can help increase the severity of addiction. But at the end of the day, at its core, addiction is a choice that you're willing to make. And it is, in a sense, it's a choice, but it's also like a disease too, right? That plagues you. And, at some point you have to sit down and you have to realize, like, this is, I need help. I need support, because I can't do this alone, because this is a me problem. And for the longest time, this me problem has not been being solved by just me. Like, I can't solve my own me problem. So I need this help. And I need to finally say, like, this is who I am, and this is part of my journey and my path and my identity, and finding some sort of value in getting out of that is going to be the most beneficial. And so you see a lot of these addiction modalities that are quite universal. I've been dealing with a lot of individuals and just peers of mine who may have addictions to like pornography or sex use or caffeine or screen time, and the modality stays is that, like, this is a choice that I'm making, and how do I tangibly get out of this and change my identity to say, I am no longer this, I am something far above this, I have turned this around, and this is my past life. And you can't do that alone. You have to do that with the context of people around you. You have to find environmental cues that might be stimulating these thoughts or these cravings. You have to there's a multi-factor model approach to recovering from an addiction. It's never going to be easy. It's never going to be simple. It's never going to be if I just do this, it'll work, right? It's I need this and this and this and this and this, and then all these things together can kind of cascade down upon me, and suddenly I feel better. I feel better about myself, and I feel like I can tackle this addiction. So yeah, it is quite universal. And if you find or research anything about recovering from alcohol, recovering from opiates, recovering from methamphetamines, and whatever, it's like those same things you learn can be applied to whatever you may be struggling with personally or individually. Maybe not as bad as an opiate addiction, but it's still something that's plaguing you. And once you figure out that, it's plaguing me and that needs to end, then you can kind of have some leeway room to work on that, right?
I'm noticing this theme of becoming comfortable with your identity, and then that leads to change. How can someone become more comfortable with their identity as an opioid user, or a nicotine user, or a pornography user?
I mean, this user term is almost like a leech to identity, right? It's like you have this sense of this is who I am, these are my thoughts, my values, my morals. This is how I engage with people. This is what I think politically, spiritually. And these are all parts of the building blocks of who you are as a person. And ultimately, like, you're trying to build a stable building on a solid foundation, right? And if you have this like leech, or I guess if we're using the building metaphor, maybe like being a user is almost like mini earthquakes, like seismic activity. Like every time you remember, I'm a user, this little earthquake happens and the foundation of your building kind of shatters almost. And if it doesn't fully shatter, you see little cracks in the bricks, right? And so in this case, it would be like, identity is so important, and to say, yes, I'm a user, yes, these earthquakes are happening, but I need people to be here to help fill in these cracks, to help support this foundation every time these earthquakes occur. And then through time, you will start to build an identity that is earthquake proof, right? I mean, think about it like the tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, was specifically engineered to withstand seismic activity, because it would be catastrophic to the entire city if it fell. So that's kind of like that's like your end goal, right? Is you're specifically trying to find ways to engineer your identity, to withstand earthquake, to withstand societal environmental pressure, to withstand addiction and use, and like I said, part of that is recognizing that these are going to come. I am a user, and my foundation is very unstable, and that awareness is what's going to lead you to say, let's build, right? Let's create a stronger foundation.
For the audience member out there, the listener of this episode, I've noticed that also social interaction and other people helping out those in recovery helps a lot, tremendously. And I know from personal experience, as well as like friends around me, that that's the case. It's very true. What are some ways that people could help those in recovery that they may, let's say, worst case scenario, the person in recovery isn't even willing to, is dismissive of the help, just say it that way. What are some ways they could still help out or encourage the recovering addict?
I think that's a hard question to really give a concrete answer, because unfortunately there's not a lot of options. If somebody's dismissive, saying I don't need this help, this is not going to help, nothing's going to work, this is just who I'm going to be, etc., it's hard to make an impact from a third party perspective, right? You need some sort of sense of awareness from this individual of like, hey, maybe I do need help. I've been trying to do this alone, and obviously it hasn't been working. Maybe it's time to think outside the box and get somebody else part of this journey, right? And so I guess for those of you who are watching, who you might be thinking of an individual in your life who is struggling with an addiction, whether it be pornography, alcohol, opioids, nicotine, cell phone use. A lot of it is going to be just being there, being present, and saying, look, it sucks, it hurts to see that you might be a little closed off right now. I wish you weren't. I wish that you could be open. And maybe sit with that. Sit with what I'm telling you. And if you decide, whether it be soon or far in the future, that you are ready to invite people in, I am here. And that won't change. In the Portland Rescue Mission, we say that we walk with people at a pace that they can sustain. We are changing our pace of life. Whether we are a go, fast paced, like let's get things done person, or slow, just free flow, whatever happens person. Like we need to and are responsible for matching the pace of another individual. And part of that is saying like, hey, whether it be tomorrow or 5 years in the future, if you feel like you are ready to invite somebody into this journey of recovery, I am here. And that will not change. And I will always be that for you. Right. And that is the key. That's crucial. That's important. That's motivating. That's motivating to hear that no matter how long it's going to take, no matter how powerful this addiction has a grasp on me, no matter how frail and weak my foundation is of identity, I will have somebody there to walk alongside me if I so choose to accept it. That in itself, you will find a lot of power in, and you will find that come time, it might not be in your time, it might not be when your plan, it might be difficult to have to wait for this to happen. Situations and occurrences might happen before they finally decide to accept it, but that in itself is the most powerful and the only thing that you can do. And in time, I am a full believer that they would be willing to accept it and finally come to you. That is your responsibility as a third party person in the situation. And once they come to you, just be open. Say like, I'm here, I'm listening, don't be quick to listen and slow to speak, right? Don't offer your advice, don't offer your input. They don't want to hear that. They just want to hear that you are listening to them. That's going to be so advantageous.
That's so encouraging that just being with the person can have such a powerful impact. That's really an awesome thing. I want to touch on the homelessness aspect of the Portland Rescue Mission. So homelessness as it is, what does that look like? As a very kind of like 30,000 foot level position, what does that look like? And in combination to that, what might be some misinformation that is very common that people believe about homelessness?
Right. Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, homelessness is in psychology, we call it a biopsychosocial modality. I mean, there's nature and nurture that go into the possibility of becoming homeless. I mean, mental health, addiction, trauma, strained family relationships. There's so much that goes into it. And, there are a lot of individuals who we would call chronically homeless, and then there are some that we would not call chronically homeless. They're more like just temporarily or intermittently homeless. So to define those for context, somebody who is chronically homeless is homeless for 2 years consecutively, or 2 years off and on within 6 years. So, That's how you would kind of define chronic homelessness. And once an individual gets to that point, there's a lot more that goes into getting them out of that point than meets the eye. So that kind of like shifts into, what are some common misconceptions is that number one, something that I often hear and see in individuals is somebody who might be couch surfing, say like your buddy graduated college and he's working, he has a job, he has a full-time job, but it's minimum wage, fast food, something like that, and he doesn't quite have the expenses to buy an apartment or rent an apartment or that kind of thing, or find a place to stay, and so he surfs. What I was meaning to say, couch surfs. He stays at your place for 2 months, stays at another mutual friend for another 3 months, stays at a third mutual friend for 4 months, and maybe he just for 2 years he's couch surfing, but he still has a full-time position. Would that be considered homeless? And most people say, no, I think he has a job, he has a shelter, he has a place, a roof, and that kind of thing. But a common misconception is, politically or governmentally, they would be considered homeless. In any governmental survey where they go and survey people who are experiencing homelessness, they are on that list because they do not have a shelter under their name in their possession. And you can become chronically homeless 2 years of couch surfing, and it's like that it's just some people don't think about that, is that there are plenty and multitudes of homeless individuals that you would never see walking down the street because they're not on the street. They have a roof. It's not their roof though, right? And so that's a common misconception I see. Another big one that is kind of branches into this whole moral, philosophical one, and theological one as well, is that I hear people like, oh, homelessness is this huge problem that we need to solve, right? Like solving homelessness is crucial, and governmental agencies need to solve homelessness. I want to be part of this solution to homelessness, and that's taking the concept of homelessness completely wrong, right? It's not giving it its true context and background, which is that homelessness is part of the fall of man. Back when Eve ate the apple, the world became full of sin. It inherited sin, right? And a byproduct of that is people who become homeless, who don't have shelter. The imperfections of a solid, stable life came with that. And so to say homelessness is a problem that needs to be solved is to say sin is a problem that needs to be solved, which is contradictory. Theologically, sin is not something that can be solved. It is going to be part of the earth until the earth is destroyed and we have entered into the kingdom of heaven. Homelessness, in that essence, is going to be a problem that is going to be around until the earth is destroyed and we've entered in the kingdom of heaven. If your idea and concept of homelessness is going into that, like, we need to solve this problem, you're taking the entire wrong approach, and you might be lacking some crucial empathy and context into the fact that, it's not a problem to be solved, but rather a crisis to be aided in, right? This is not something that you can be the end all for, or the government can be the end all for. This is not any of that. This is just simply something that we can try and attempt to diminish and aid this crisis as best as possible until there is no time left. Taking that heart posture and understanding that will allow you to kind of approach this problem as more humanistically, more empathetically, more with a servant heart rather than a solution heart, right? Which is probably the best approach to it. So does that kind of answer like what you're looking for? And
Yes. Specifically, I love how you mentioned right at the end the solution heart. I think that's very important because instead of just talk, a lot of people can, and I myself am a victim of this, is you can talk a lot about an idea, you can talk a lot about change,
Right.
but if you don't do anything about it, there's no practical essence as to why you're doing the thing.
Right.
And so that made me think of another question where it's, if for someone watching this video, what are some things that they could do to help combat the homelessness? Not solve it, of course, but help combat the homelessness problem, if you will,
Right.
phrase it that way. But let's say there's someone that has a lot of influence watching this, who may have a lot of sway politically, let's say that way. What are some things that would make a great impact on the world?
To solve homelessness, man, it's. I would say that for large, impactful, influential people who have governmental power, you have the ability to change entire systems, to change culture, to change how society works, right? And the best way that we can combat the homelessness crisis is dealing with it before it even happens, right? Which is strong parenting, mental health supports, laws and regulations against drug use, and just kind of supporting a child as they're growing. Like I mentioned before, a lot of my key interest and niche is in child development. It is in parenting. Like a lot of my research is in this kind of field, and like being able to help a child flourish, have a comfortable relationship with their surroundings and their caregivers, and providing them mental health support, and making sure that that's accessible, affordable, and realistic, and quality and competent is incredibly important for society to kind of deal with the homelessness crisis before it happens. That I would say is the most widespread, largest, best thing we can do. Poster child of, we are trying to aid in this humanitarian crisis. This is what we're going to do. We're going to get help before the problem happens, right? That is the poster child, the best thing we should do. And if you're an individual who may not have said governmental influence, power, right? How can you specifically help aid the government in doing that, right? How can you aid in the mental health access and support? Whether it be lifting your voice to advocate for these kind of things in responsible, professional, and realistic ways. And then more so, if you may be just a random individual who doesn't have much influence over this societal change, maybe your field of view should be less on preventing it before it happens and more on where these people are in the homelessness circle, and helping them get out of it, right? So there's a lot of nonprofits who are doing this kind of work who need your time, energy, money, and effort to help aid in this crisis. Volunteer at a shelter, donate money to a shelter. There's a lot of growth and opportunity when these shelters are better equipped to help aid people out of addiction, out of homelessness. Because right now, at least in the state of Oregon, we have the worst mental health support in the entire country. We have the second highest homelessness rate, only behind California, and that's only because California's population is incredibly higher than Oregon's. This is not like a per capita, like this is just overall, right? And Portland, Oregon specifically, like has so many opportunities to help kind of guide individuals who are experiencing homelessness step by step, like, take them, baby steps, walk them down that path. Whereas governmentally, Oregon is opposing that idea and saying, oh, let's just make housing as affordable as we can possibly, have it, throw these guys into an apartment, and call it quits and say, like, we're good. Homelessness is solved. They're off the street. But that is completely ignoring the fact that there are so many precipitating factors as to why they were out in the streets in the first place. Many of these houses or apartments or complexes, whatever, that they're just saying, all right, here's your place, go move in. They end up turning into drug houses, trap houses, and because you're not solving the process of homelessness from the very beginning and tracing it back to this is a mental health problem, this is a sin problem, this is a bad parenting problem. And so being able to take baby steps, get them into a shelter, kind of stabilize, detox, become sober, form this identity of this is who I am. I'm no longer this, I am this now. Find value outside of addiction, value outside of mental health concerns, give them counseling, and help connect them with Christ, who ultimately, if you don't have that relationship with Christ, in my opinion, you're never going to have a full, solid foundation of what it means to be yourself, to have this identity and these values. Christ-like values are going to help aid in this humanitarian process. Because as I said, homelessness is a byproduct of the inherent sin of the world. So to say, yes, you are a sinner, but you because of the shedding of blood of Christ Jesus on the cross and the resurrection of the same, you are saved, and you are given so much grace and mercy of our all-powerful Christ. And you are no longer a sinner. You are a sinner no more. You are washed free of that. Then you have this sense of stability in your identity, right? So, yeah, governmentally, the state is ignoring these facets of homelessness and just bypassing all of them, and it's not working. So if you are an individual, help support the baby steps. Be a mentor, donate, volunteer, engage in your effort and time into making sure that this is a ramp of growth rather than you need to be up here, you're right here, let's just get you into a house and it'll be solved, right? So yeah, there's kind of like that duality of societal influence and getting those who are already part of that world out of it steadily rather than rampantly, right?
That's very interesting. There's there are ways, because from my experience, just being an everyday civilian, it feels like I don't have any power politically, but showing that there is actually, reasonable things that people can do to, whether that, it's not direct changing in legislation, but it's impacting the world in a very small way.
Right.
But it's making a change,
right,
which is what's good.
Which is, ultimately, like I said, it's not a solution. It's not a problem to be solved. And no single person is going to be the end all for this problem. And so it is only a crisis to be aided. And if you get many people to aid in even the slightest little ways, donating $10, right? Spending an hour a week at a shelter, volunteering your time, just small commitments. But if you have a lot of people doing it, it is just so, you'll see so much flourishing in the whole concept of homelessness. And you'll see that this humanitarian crisis is working and it's improving. It's never going to end, but it's going to improve to a point where you're starting to live comfortably with how it's working and how homelessness is being perceived and seen within your surroundings and your context.
I want to talk more about the faith aspect in the work that you do. So sounds like based off the work that the Portland Rescue Mission does, they have a Christian background in faith.
Right.
how do you think faith ties? You've mentioned some points of like sin and how like we need to embody a Christ-like character. For those that may not know what a Christ-like character is, or know like what sin, how like it affects us per se. From your perspective as a Christian, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think it's rooted in what a lot of Christians and people who practice faith know of as the Jesus prayer. Very simple. It goes, Jesus Christ, have mercy on me, a sinner. It's that. It's simple. It's a short but profound recognition that each and every one of us living on this earth is just a rampant, senseless sinner who only is living here for self-gain, and we do so much wrong, but because of the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, we have gained forgiveness. We have gained so much mercy from an all-powerful God in which we do not deserve this. And so how can we, as people who recognize that we are so broken and hurting and wrong and sinners, how do we not understand the love and the profound nature of an all-loving, all-present God? You know, if we can't recognize that we are this, and because of him, we are no longer this, right? And so, you know, kind of tying back to, you know, the work with the rescue mission and how this ties in. We are sinners, yes. We are forgiven. We are because of the blood, our sins are washed away. And so because of such, we should exemplify walking with Jesus, doing what Jesus did on this earth when he was down here, his mission, his testimony, which was to walk with people at a pace that they could sustain, right? Jesus went to the tax collectors, he went to the zealots, he went to the prostitutes, he went to those who were blind, who were on the street, who were dirty and broken. And he said, "Come, follow me. I will heal you. I will guide you. I will give you so much joy, right? And I will be a catalyst to instill value and self-love in you." So if we can exemplify those things that Jesus Christ did on this earth, we can instill self-love and value in individuals who are experiencing trauma, who are experiencing mental health concerns, addiction, homelessness. That is where we start to get them out of these rough situations, is saying that you have this inherent value, and that is only going to be found in Jesus Christ. But how are you going to find that Jesus Christ, that value in Jesus Christ, if we cannot share that light with these individuals and be great examples of Jesus Christ on this earth?
Definitely. I love the part you mentioned about the Jesus prayer, because it makes me think of a gospel song that I personally love. In the lyrics, they go, "I'm just a sinner saved by grace. When I stood condemned to death, he took my hand. Now I live and breathe in freedom. With each breath of life I take, I'm loved and forgiven. Back with the living. I'm just a sinner saved by grace." And those lyrics are very comforting. As do it right now, I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah.
And so I love how you touched on that aspect. It's just amazing.
And within those lyrics, freedom can be taken in so many contexts, right? Freedom from addiction, freedom from homelessness, freedom from mental health concerns. There's, you know, freedom from pornography, freedom from nicotine, right? You know, once you recognize that Jesus Christ is going to be is your Savior, and you have changed radically through him, then you can find that freedom, right?
Definitely. And that's great, man. It's just so encouraging to people, even if like they're not of like a Christian faith and background. It's still like maybe if they are exploring religion, this is like a possibility.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I want to touch a little bit, kind of circling back to the conversation. You mentioned that you've done a lot of research in parenting and child development.
Right.
In your experience, what have you seen contributes to the best parenting styles and the most, I guess, if you will, strong people that grow up, and what contributes as well to those who become homeless?
Okay. I mean, I think in this instance, I will try and provide my insight in my research and my experience with how can we be the best parent for our children, what causes children to grow into a flourishing human being. And then instead of really touching on what causes a child to become homeless, because like I said, there's multiple factors that go into it, rather I'll kind of sway that and change the direction of that question into what causes a child to not flourish, to develop bad habits, right? And so we see in research a lot, there's specific parenting styles, right? In which authoritarian is kind of seen as the worst parenting style. It's very, I am in control of you. I am a power figure. You are only to submit to my parenting, right? And this builds a lot of resentment with children. Children grow up to resent and very much dislike and almost hate their parents because they want this sense of liberty and freedom to be treated like I am a human being. I deserve to have some sense of self-worth and morality. And so you'll often find that children that are raised in homes of authoritarian parents tend to have this sense of need to be the bigger person, and they will go out of their way to illegal actions just to gain this sense of self-worth of I'm powerful, because all they've ever known growing up was I am to submit to power, right? And they just don't have this sense of self-worth. And then flipping that over to the other side, authoritative, which is different than authoritarian. Authoritative is a parenting style that kind of takes the approach of I am your parent. Yes, you should listen to me, but I am not going to be the one that will forever control you. I recognize your need for independence, but also in order to get you there, I need to watch over you. I need to make sure you're protected. I need to make sure you're okay. I need to monitor you. And so a lot of children who are raised in correct households, and I should not say the word correct because, it is very context dependent. There are cultural values that influence parenting drastically. And there's some children that definitely gain better outcomes from different parenting styles. But generally, at least in Western research, it shows that parents that value and instill kids' independence as human beings, and love them and give them comfort and warmth, right? But also monitor them and make sure they're not, doing anything stupid. You can probably remember when you were a kid and your parents were like, "Hey, you can't have a phone yet," right? Or hey, you can't, if you're with a friend who's a girl, you can't have your room shut. You need to keep it cracked or open, and you get angry, be like, "Oh, why? I want my independence." But as you grow up, you kind of look back at that and you'd be surprised to think like that actually was really incredibly helpful. Who knows what kind of choices I would have made if my door was shut? Who knows what kind of choices I would have made if I had a phone when I was 10 years old? I know somebody very close to me who was given a phone very early on, and now they are a rampant pornography user. Right? And so to have a parent who instills independence and warmth, but also monitors and it instills these we are still your parents, we need to watch over you and protect you, tend to lend to better results. And oftentimes when people are grown up and experiencing maybe addiction, homelessness, mental health concerns, you can trace that back to really poor parenting. You can trace that back to either parents who instill, I am in control of you and everything you do must be submitted through me and to me. And, I dictate every choice you make, or parent who is completely like neglectful and emotionally withdrawn, somebody who does not watch over their kid, does not protect them from environmental worldly things when they are young. And both of those are incredibly damaging to an individual, to a child as they're growing up. And so, if you're at home and maybe you're thinking, I want to be a parent one day, or I want, maybe it's not, maybe you are a parent now, and you're reviewing how you are approaching your relationship with your child. I advise you, through somebody who is very passionate about this kind of research, to remain warm and patient with your child. Hold to values of gentle parenting. And it sucks because society likes to tell you that gentle parenting is boring and lame. I mean, there are a lot of people who say like, oh, I'm out in public and I see this kid throwing a tantrum and their mom's like, oh, honey, let's not do that, okay? And they're like, just yell at them, right? And it's like, no, that's going to damage the child. Right? It might solve the problem temporarily. It might get them from whining or complaining but you're instilling fear. You're instilling I am superiority and I am to tell you what to do and you are to listen to me only, and the child will grow with resentment for you. Children at a young age who might not even be able to speak a word still are cognitively aware of the concept of resentment for their parent. Children who are still so young, within the first year of their birth, if they're not given warmth by their caretaker, will learn that is not something that is going to happen to them. And so they will build resentment for their caretaker for not giving them what they deserve as a child. And so there are a lot of misconceptions here. Be a gentle parent. Give them warmth. Yet at the same time, protect them. You're in charge of making sure that they are making smart decisions, that they are, watched over and monitored about their screen time, their time with friends, their curfew, all that kind of stuff. These are important things to have to help develop a healthy and stable child, right? So yeah, there's a lot of these aspects, and when you don't have that, obviously you have a child who does not, conform to these healthy life stability and identities, and then they start to incorporate delinquent or problem behavior, right?
Mm. That's very interesting. You mentioned gentle parenting, and I kind of want to push back a little bit.
Okay.
So, gentle parenting, you gave the example of the kid who's in public, maybe they're causing a commotion.
Right.
And the parent's like, no, it's okay. Like, shh, like it's okay.
Yeah.
Calming the kid down. I personally had an experience recently like this where it was I watched a movie. I was in a movie theater, and there was a kid who was very, let's just say, uncontrolled.
Right.
And kind of screaming at everything. And it was a distraction to everyone in the theater who were trying to enjoy the experience. And the parents were like, no, like it's okay. It got to the point that they got kicked out.
Mm.
My thought process, now this may not be the research-backed thought process of parenting. My thought process is that there are some moments as a parent in which you may have to instill that authority, and because there are moments like that at a movie theater where it's like everyone needs to be quiet to enjoy the movie, to enjoy the. So my question is, where's like a good place to draw the line? Maybe there isn't even a place to draw the line, because in my mind, what that's doing is no one's benefiting in that situation, because the child's not benefiting because they're not learning self-control, and then the other people aren't benefiting because they're trying to watch the movie.
I think in this instance you might be confused and I guess maybe if I said something that draw this idea, then I apologize, because my intention is not to say that authority is bad, right? Your parents are authority, right? You are to listen to them, and there's psychological and theological backing to that claim, right? But the line draws with anger, draws with fear, right? So I would say, like, in this movie theater scenario, telling a child, probably the best outcome would be to grab the child, bring them outside of the theater, get them away from the context that is aiding into their frustration, their emotion. And number one, saying, this is not appropriate, you should not be doing this, but calmly, right? You don't need to be shouting at them, you don't need to be yelling at them. Your goal is to not have them be afraid of you, right? Your goal is to say, like, I'm your parent, you should listen to what I have to tell you, without saying, I'm your parent, you should be afraid of my reaction whenever you do this thing, right? There's that kind of separation. Both have authority, but one is a healthy authority and one is an angry and fearful authority, right? And so being able to say, this is not appropriate, you should not be doing this, without instilling fear. But also, what research shows that's really important is children, even at a very young age, really value what other people think of them significantly. So one of the best punishments, I guess, in this case, is using that concept to your advantage by saying, you caused a ruckus or a commotion in there. The people do not like that. The people sitting around you were really mad at you. Like they wanted to enjoy this movie, and you did not make this movie enjoyable for them. Okay, because of your screaming and yelling and ruckus. That's very vital and actually kind of impactful to a child, and it'll help them realize, like, oh, people won't like me if I cause this ruckus. Okay, then I need to not cause this ruckus. I want people to like me. And because when people like me, they'll give me attention and candy and all this kind of stuff, right? It's very, like, positive reinforcement oriented at the end of the day. Is I want people to like me because I'm going to get something out of it. Because that's all children can think about morally, is what am I going to get out of this, right? And so using that to your advantage as a parent and instilling authority without being fearful, without saying, like, oh, you don't want to yell at your child, you don't want to get them to build resentment for you. You don't want this to be a pattern of, if you freak out in the middle of a movie theater every single time you do that, I'm going to go out and spank you and hit you or yell at you. That's not something you want to instill into their brains, because they're going to build that resentment and anger. But saying, like, this is not something we should do. The people around you didn't like that, and let's not do that again. Okay, and still doing that with the sense of, I am your authority, you should listen to me because I'm your parent, right? Does that kind of maybe seem like a better approach to you, or how do you? I'm curious how maybe, I know that you don't have any children, but maybe if you were to have children and be put in that scenario, how might you react to your child screaming in a movie theater? And based on what I told you, is there anything that you would change from your inherent reaction?
Yeah, I guess, like, what I was confusing with the gentle parenting was more like a permissive parenting style, where it's like you're just letting them do it, but, like, you're just like nudging at them. Right. Like, okay, this may not be good.
Like, hey, let's not do this, okay?
Yeah.
And then leaving it at that, right?
But I see now more that the idea of gentle parenting is more, it's like the authoritative. It's like they're the same thing, essentially.
Right.
It's just, like, maybe a slightly different posture at times. But no, I would say, like, what you explained is, like, pretty dead on what I would do.
Warmth, but attentiveness to the problem.
Right. Yes. Because I like how you made the distinction of, like, you don't want to instill fear.
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing that, like, that is very traumatic, can be very traumatic for kids. I also like the point that you mentioned about how kids really care about what other people think. It makes me think back to the research as well of child development, how I learned this in class. I forget what class it was, but probably in Ernest Kim class. But we learned that children between the ages of infancy and then 2 years old can't tell the difference between attention and love.
Mhm.
And so you just being in the presence of them,
Mhm.
it's love.
It's love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting to me, especially when it comes to like the parenting.
And children also can't tell the difference between warmth, as in like literal physical heat, and love too, between like birth and 1 or so kind of thing. So it's like that's why it's incredibly important. The second that a mother gives birth and the child is cleaned and maybe any health concerns are stripped away, that the baby get brought to the mother's chest, feel the warmth, be close, and to the father too. You know, the research shows that a child who is touching skin to skin contact with the mother and father right after birth tends to be a child who has a more secure attachment to their caregiver, right? And you know that kind of goes into this whole concept of attachment style, which you know I am a hardcore attachment theorist. I genuinely fully believe that the warmth and care and attachment that you have with your primary caregiver, in most instances is your mother, reflects what kind of attachment you'll have with all other relationships in the rest of your life. And that is built within the first 4 years of your life. 0 to 4, you have a secure attachment with your mom, your chances of having a secure attachment with your spouse, with your friends, with your supervisor, your coworkers, all that kind of stuff. It's going to be relatively stable. And likewise for an insecure attachment, like something that's fearful or anxious, right? And it's very, very difficult to change that concept in your mind. It's not impossible, but it is incredibly difficult and requires a lot of therapy and rewriting narratives to change the aspect of this is how a relationship is, this is how attachment is always going to be, which really kind of like wrapping it back to the concept of homelessness, like that is huge. I'm a sole believer that many of these humanitarian problems like homelessness, world hunger, and well, maybe not world hunger, but like homelessness and mental health problems and addiction stems back to bad parenting. I am a sole believer, and that comes with maybe a non-warm, non-attentive, or overly attentive helicopter or aggressive or fearful type of parenting. You know, it stems to that, and that within the first 4 years of their life is going to be like how they interpret relationships with anyone else and all attachments of anyone else in their future, which in turn will give them less support. They will, you know, have worse relationships with coworkers and, you know, supervisors, so they have a harder time holding a job. You know, their relationships with family are going to diminish. So they will have, you know, maybe they get in a situation where they do become homeless, but, you know, some people, like say for us, for example, we're in college, you know, when we leave college, let's say that we don't have a place to stay, like, oh, shit, I don't have enough money to spend for an apartment. We just go home. We live at home because we have that family connection. We have that ability. Some people don't because they have had such a hurt and damaged attachment style. And so that's how they believe it's going to be for all family. And so they're not going to reach out to their family. They're not going to build these kind of relationships. You know, it all stems back to this kind of attachment thing because social connection is so important to growth and identity and value. And if you cannot have healthy social connection because that's what you've learned, you're never going to have these things in your life.
So to summarize everything that's been said, we touched on, like, at least in this section right here, we touched on a lot of good stuff.
Right.
So it's like attachment style parenting.
Right. Yeah.
So it just shows how like important those things are.
Very,
and they
very crucially
determine
important.
how like they can determine your outcome in life. It's
Yes.
very interesting. I ask my guests this question every time I have them on the podcast, and I've asked it to you before.
Yes.
But the question is, are you happy?
I am more than happy. I believe that, you know, back on when we were talking about theology and being a sinner, I believe that I am no different. I am a wretched sinner. I've done a lot of wrong in my life, but I have been saved by an all-loving God. I have been saved by the creator of everything, and he is sitting here in this room with us. How can I not be happy? How can I not be happy that I am going to have eternity in paradise with those I love? I have a wonderful spouse. I have wonderful friends. I have a wonderful education. And I've been beyond blessed with things I do not deserve. And so I cannot look at everything I've been graciously given by our Lord God and say that I'm not happy.
How have you found, because in a lot of the experiences I've talked with people about happiness, it ties a lot into how they find purpose and meaning in their life. So how, in your experience, have you been able to find meaning and purpose? And has that made you happy?
Very much so. I mean, I shed it on a lot of meaning and purpose spiritually. You know, there's meaning and purpose in family connections. There's meaning and purpose in peer support, in mentorship, you know, in healthy activities, in mental and physical health. And, you know, all these domains just, you know, though, yes, I have my problems. Yes, I have issues with mental health. Yes, I have some issues with my family connections or my friends, that kind of stuff. I am beyond blessed to have these support structures in all of these domains that help facilitate happiness and facilitate meaning. And so, you know, finding meaning in domains, and if you're unfamiliar with some good domains to try and instill meaning, I recommend searching up Sources of Strength, which is a research-backed suicide prevention, but more so upstream suicide prevention. So it's helping flourishing, helping grow children and individuals in developing meaning in different contexts of their life. And once they do that, they are going to live a happier and more fulfilling life. So definitely look those up if you have some time. And I, you know, have done a lot of research and thought and prayer over how these domains impact my life. And I'm beyond blessed to have strength in all of them. So.
On this note of like right at the end here with sources, before I ask the final question, what are some sources out there that people could access to help with like homelessness, for example? Another thing might be their own addiction that they might be struggling with. A friend who's struggling with addiction. What are some resources out there that people might not know?
The number one resource is always going to be community, right? Number one. So it's going to be finding a stable community. I highly recommend a church community, a faith-based community, a small devotional group. If you're a man, a men's group is incredibly important because vulnerability within men shows significant impact in recovery over addiction. Alpha groups is another one. AA meetings, 12-step meetings for addiction. So finding intentionally groups of people and maybe groups of people that might kind of be dealing with the same things you are would be incredibly helpful resource. There's also lots of online resources like mental health support online, counseling online. There are a lot of organizations, nonprofit organizations that offer professional counseling. And they call it on a sliding pay scale, right? So it assesses how much you're making and charges you for the counseling session depending on how much you're making. And a lot of these companies say $1 to $150 per session or something like that. And it's like, hey, I'm homeless, or hey, I just don't have any money right now, you know? There are resources in your city. I guarantee you, if you're living in a relatively built and large city, or you know, maybe close to one, there are those resources where you can get what you need support wise without having to sacrifice much.
Awesome. And then to wrap up this whole interview, I
Mhm.
ask this final question to every guest as well. If the audience were to take away one thing from this entire episode, it could be something you've said, it could be something you have not said. What would that be?
Would that be? Be a good and grateful and gracious person. Be patient with those around you. Walk at a pace they can sustain. Change your pace to fit somebody else's. If somebody is struggling and they're taking things slow, take things slow with them and be consistent with that. Because the last thing somebody needs when they're struggling is somebody who's fat. Hey, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. They're like, no, just slow down. It's okay. Take this one step at a time. You're in no rush, especially if you're our age. Like if you're 18 to 24, that's the age that has the most concentration of alcohol use. And you have plenty of time. You are in no rush to be sober. Context dependent, but generally you're in no rush to be sober. Take your time to make sure you're doing it well, and gain community is really incredibly important. Call your parents, tell them you love them. Say thank you if they were well to you. Say thank you for not instilling fear in me, for being warm and comforting. And if they did still instill fear in you, learn to forgive is incredibly important. Learn to forgive. Find a sense of identity and forgiveness and warmth and patience.
Well, thank you so much, Judah, for doing this episode.
Yeah.
We learned a lot of stuff in this
It's
episode.
been a pleasure.
Yes, it's been awesome. And to you, audience out there, thank you for listening. This is another episode of Defining Reality. And the next episode will be released in a month's time. But in 2 weeks, there will be a solo episode released. So look forward to that. Thank you all for watching, and see you in the next video.